Now this tall plant right here is called Ceiba speciosa, otherwise known as silk floss tree. So this is not a typical houseplant. It actually gets to be a huge tree, and it's native to parts of South America, so like Brazil, Paraguay, Bolivia, I believe. And you can actually see these in streets, and they are massive, and they get these really huge flowers. Actually, Ceiba speciosa actually means showy, and I really do think it's probably because of the flowers. And of course, this is not flowering, but it gets these big fuchsia, showy flowers that I think people actually grow this plant for. But I particularly like it because it has these palmate leaves. It looks a little bit to me like a schefflera, and I do really love scheffleras. And what's also interesting about this plant is that you could see that if you look a little closely, you might be able to see that it has a bit of a green stem, and that is typical for some of these young varieties because this will actually produce its own chlorophyll. And I've had this now for 2 growing seasons. And I've noticed that in the winter period, or I guess the dormant season, it actually loses all of its leaves. So it doesn't really look like much in the winter. And because I'm shooting this right now in the springtime, this is actually putting out its new leaves, and it looks so beautiful. I have this growing right below my southwest facing window, so it is getting a tremendous amount of light. And this particular plant is a very drought tolerant plant, so it can withstand a lot of that sun and a little lack of rain. But when I'm watering this, and when you water this plant, it will start to grow quite large and quite quickly, and we'll start putting out all this kind of green foliage, as you could see here. So I'm watering this, I would say, about once a week now that it's the growing season, and throughout spring, summer, and fall I'll be watering it about once to twice a week depending on how intense the sunlight is. And from a fertilizer perspective, I would say that you could get away with doing this on a quarterly basis, maybe just having a well-balanced fertilizer. If it's starting to flower and starting to bud, I mean, lucky you, because this hasn't flowered yet and maybe I haven't had it long enough, but I would just up the phosphorus level, so maybe a 10-20-10. But if it's just putting out the foliage, I would say just then a regular, well-balanced 10-10-10 fertilizer. And then you could cut that by half and do that on a quarterly or maybe even an annually basis. As far as propagation goes, I would imagine that seed would be great for this, but I also think that you could probably propagate it different ways, maybe even through air rooting, but I haven't actually, air layering, but I haven't actually tried doing that, but that is kind of typical for a little bit more of a woody plant. As far as pests go, I haven't had any pest pressures. I've only been growing this for a couple seasons now, however, but for right now, I haven't had any of those challenges. I would imagine that spider mites could actually affect this plant, but haven't had that problem at all. And as you can see here, there's a lot of like new growth, which I'm so excited about. And I think that's the beauty of spring, is just seeing a lot of new growth on your plants.